A demon lives in this city, Mr. Holmes.
What is over there?
A trip from which you will never return, Watson. Trust me, don't go there. Beyond that threshold is an abyss. Hell. He is an angry man in despair following a mistake that cannot be fixed.
My goodness, Holmes, it was a slaughter.
And so, my dear Watson, the day and night which we passed in Whitechapel were enlightening, weren't they?
An adventure that I most certainly will never relate. To be in the skin of that poor woman. I prefer not to speak of it further. But have we really learned anything about the murderer? Obviously a man, given the necessary strength.
We have little to go on, at least no more than the police. But in my opinion, Inspector Abberline has a trick or two up his sleeve. No, I want to talk about the facts and what we can draw from them. We know where the crime was committed and under what conditions. I would like to ask you about the possible motives for the crime. According to you, Watson, what could have pushed the murderer to act in such a way?
So having now visited Bucks Row, we are going to examine potential motives from the Ripper.
Black magic?
I'm not terribly interested in the occult or black magic. Let's give the benefit of the doubt to this motive.
Reminder that this game was set in the 19th century and certain things were still taken as gospel.
Theft, perhaps?
I have a hard time believing that someone would attack poor Polly so fiercely just to rob her of a few coins.
Even though violent crime was fairly common in London at that time.
Homicidal insanity, Holmes.
It is indubitable that the man who did this to Polly Nichols is not of his full senses.
Given the veracity of the attack on Polly, that would seem to be completely and utterly consistent with what we know so far.
Revenge, Holmes?
Revenge could be a possible motive, but with one small reservation. We have reason to believe that the victim considered her murderer to be a typical client.
By typical client, it could be revenge for something other than being
Elementary.
spared.
Very well, Watson. I think that we've exhausted the topic. Take a rest and we'll speak again later.
Ah, it would seem that the investigation is advancing, Holmes. Yesterday's Star said that a suspect is in the hands of the police, a man with a rather sinister reputation.
I was about to join you in your optimistic outlook until you informed me that the good news came from the press, Watson.
But surely they wouldn't invent the fact that the police are holding a suspect, or the acts that are attributed to him.
You will have an exact answer to these two questions in less than 50 seconds, Watson.
Pardon?
Enter, Inspector.
Good day.
Dear Watson, allow me to introduce Inspector Abberline. Inspector, Dr. Watson.
Inspector?
To what do we owe the honour of your presence, Inspector?
I heard that the two of you made your way to Whitechapel a few days ago. Your arrival, you are aware, coincides with a very serious affair which our police service is going to great lengths to solve and which is creating strong tensions in the area.
Pardon me, but haven't you arrested someone? A certain Leather Apron?
Absolutely not. The man who hides behind this name is indeed being actively searched for by the force. Besides, nothing at the moment suggests that he is the Bucks Row murderer.
There, you've been enlightened, Watson. Now it is our turn to answer Inspector Abberline's questions.
Indeed. I will be brief and precise. Do you intend to investigate this case, or have you already started?
It is to be of service to a friend that I went to Whitechapel. We did, out of curiosity, familiarise ourselves with the preliminary reports, and we made our way to the scene of the crime. Our conclusions are slim, as are the clues. Having not been officially appointed by a client, I believe that my intervention in this business will end there.
Very well. To be frank, you take the weight off my shoulders by distancing yourself from the case. Our image isn't very good, to say nothing of what the press puts us through. Thus, if overnight they found out that you were on the case, people would turn against us.
And they would pester me, overwhelm me, and finally make me out to be responsible for the inevitable failure such a scenario entails. Neither you nor I wish for this to happen. I know that your time is precious, Inspector. I will send you a note regarding my conclusions shortly.
With pleasure. Gentlemen?
Do you think that he will find the murderer?
The chances are slim to non-existent. It is 7 days now, short of a confession from the murderer himself.
And you will not go further?
You heard the Inspector, Watson. My presence in Whitechapel would hinder, which doesn't mean that we will drop the case.
How is that?
The Inspector spoke of me, but not of us. It is you, Watson, who will lead the investigation tonight. It is you who will bring to the police station the little note that I will write regarding our conclusions. Despite the late hour, there is nothing to stop you from making inquiries about this famous Leather Apron while you are there.
Unlike many of the inspectors who have appeared in Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's adventures, Frederick Abberline would not have someone with the capabilities of Sherlock Holmes at his disposal during the autumn of 1888. Abberline was born on the 8th of January 1843, and in 1887 he was moved to A Division in Whitehall, and then later that year was moved to the Scotland Yard Division. He was promoted again in early 1888 to First Class Inspector, and he was the foremost person on the ground in terms of police presence in Whitechapel during the period. Abberline appears to have been well liked by his peers, described as a portly and gentle-speaking man who had proved himself in many big cases. Sadly, the Whitechapel murders would prove to be one case that Abberline could not crack, describing the period as being drowning in theories, and he left the investigation in 1889, although the reason for that has never been explained. Abberline would not talk much about the case in subsequent years. However, in 1903, upon the conviction of George Chapman, he would let it be known to the Gazette in London that Chapman was his preferred suspect. Abberline would die aged 86 in 1929. While we go over Sherlock Holmes' note here that he is going to be sending on to the Whitechapel police, I felt like it would be helpful to go through some of the more factual areas around the case. The first thing I'm going to explore is what I mentioned just recently in Abberline's bio, the identity of George Chapman, otherwise known as Severin Klazowski, who was a junior surgeon in Poland in 1887, who came to London to work as an assistant hairdresser. At the time, in 1888, Chapman, or Klazowski, however you want to address him, was not a suspect in the murders. However, he became one when he moved to America in 1891, and it turned out that he murdered at least one and possibly three of his wives through poisoning. And this, combined with the fact that the Ripper killing stopped after Klazowski left the UK to go to America, would suggest that it's possible Klazowski was the Ripper. However, there is quite a lot that goes against this theory, most of which is that if a serial killer has such brutal tendencies as Jack the Ripper, then it's very unlikely they're going to change their MO to poisoning, and most of the evidence against Klazowski seems to come from the fact that he was qualified as a surgeon, which goes together with some of the reports from the coroners on the Ripper victims that the perpetrator may have had surgical knowledge, and the fact the killing stopped in 1888 or with the time that Chapman left. Overall, Chapman is not seen as a massively credible Ripper candidate. However, what I'd also like to do in this second half is move back to Polly Nichols for a bit. While I've decided not to show an image of the corpse or the mortuary footage, you can very much find that yourself if you really want to, if you really do want to view it. I can go through what was mentioned about Polly Nichols at the inquest. And I'm quoting now. 5 teeth were missing, and there was a slight laceration of the tongue. There was a bruise running along the lower part of the jaw on the right side of the face. That might have been caused by a blow from a fist or pressure from a thumb. There was a circular bruise on the left side of the face, which might also have been inflicted by the pressure of the fingers. On the left side of the neck, about 1 inch below the jaw, there was an incision about 4 inches in length, and ran from a point immediately below the ear. On the same side, but an inch below and commencing about 1 inch in front of it, was a circular incision which terminated at a point about 3 inches below the right jaw. That incision completely severed all the tissues down to the vertebra. The large vessels of the neck on both sides were severed. Incidentally, this likely means that the trachea was severed as well, so there would have been no way that Polly could have screamed even if she was alive when this happened, although the game is going to lengths to suggest that Mary was strangled before her throat was slit. The cuts must have been caused by a long-bladed knife, moderately sharp and used with great violence. No blood was found on the breast, either of the body or of the clothes. There were no injuries across the body until just about the lower part of the abdomen. 2 or 3 inches from the left side was a wound running in a jagged manner. The wound was a very deep one and the tissues were cut through. There were several incisions running across the abdomen. There were 3 or 4 similar cuts running downwards on the right side, all of which had been caused by a knife which had been used violently and downwards. The injuries were from left to right and might have been done by a left-handed person, again going back to is Jack the Ripper left-handed. All of the injuries have been caused by the same instrument. Upon seeing his wife's body, William Nichols, who, let's remember that Polly had left William 6 or 7 times during their relationship, so there would have certainly been some resentment there. However, upon seeing his wife's body, William Nichols was heard to say, "I forgive you as you are for what you have been to me." What we're looking at now is a newspaper cutout reporting on Leather Apron. This is the individual who has been mentioned as someone with a savage demeanour, someone who walked around with a leather apron and intimidating most of the streetwalkers on the in Whitechapel. So therefore he is someone who, in the early parts of this investigation, is certainly at the forefront of police minds, saying, for example, the man is unquestionably mad. So he will be the first person that we are going to investigate during this whole period, although I imagine it's not going to be this easy. So let's take a trip back to Whitechapel.
Well, if I follow Holmes's instructions, then to begin my investigation into this Leather Apron, I must first head to the police station.
Good evening, sir. What do you... I know you. You were here last week with Sherlock Holmes.
Indeed. I have come to bring a message from Sherlock Holmes for Inspector Abberline.
Very well, I will pass it on. But come to think of it, someone was asking about you recently. Finley, the caretaker of some shady boarding house nearby. Does that mean anything to you?
Ah, perhaps. Actually, I read in the Star that you have arrested a suspect called Leather Apron.
You shouldn't believe what you read in that rag, sir. The man is being hunted, but we have yet to get our hands on him, and we aren't close to it either.
Why ever not?
Bah, he's a specialist in the streetwalker racket. These girls make pitiful witnesses, and we don't inspire confidence. Furthermore, the man seems to be pretty discreet lately. Someone must be helping to hide him.
How to get on his trail, then?
One of these girls would have to confide in us and give a valid description of the man. Then we'd ask around the journeymen, who use aprons, I imagine.
Well, goodbye. I must go to Finley's boarding house. Good evening, Finley.
Oh, good evening, sir. Aren't you the gentleman who was with the great detective the other time?
That is indeed me, Dr. Watson. Tell me, Finley, I was told that you were looking for us at the police station.
Indeed, I wanted to thank you for last time, you know. That vagrant has never set foot round mine again. I even found a tenant, one who pays his rent, I mean.
You don't seem very happy, but you were lucky to have found a good tenant so quickly.
It's just that this man is very strange. He paid several days in advance and I gave him a key to the place. Since then, he goes out every night and returns at ungodly hours. I'm sure he goes to visit the ladies, but still, every night. And when he moved in, something must have broken in his case and stank up the stairs in his room for 2 days. I think it was a jar. It must be over there.
Tell me, have you heard talk of Leather Apron?
By the papers, that's all. This man seems very sinister.
Do you know any journeymen who use this type of apron?
The slaughterhouse butchers, I believe, but definitely the cobblers. I know one, old Isaac Solomonovich. His workshop is on a small street in the Jewish community, across from the hospital. He's a good man. He can help you. But you know, the people there are very close and don't share much with non-Jews.
Thank you, Finley.
At your service, sir.
This odour is very strong indeed, but the whole neighbourhood as such has a dreadful stench. Finley might have an idea as to what this jar that contained.
What do you want, Doctor?
You're right, the pieces of the jar that your tenant broke do give off a strange smell.
It's true. That's quite normal given his trade.
Yes, and what would the trade be of your strange tenant?
A doctor, like yourself, I believe. Dr. Tumblety, a foreigner. Canadian, perhaps.
Dr. Tumblety. It might be interesting to know more about him.
Oh, it's you. I'm coming. Dr. Watson, how are you?
Well, and yourself? And how's your uncle?
Oh, he sleeps a lot, but he doesn't seem to be suffering. Your medicine has worked wonders. Thank you again.
It was the least I could do. I have come to see you about a certain Leather Apron. Have you heard of him?
Oh, yes, of course. Terrible things are said about that man.
Have you ever come across him?
Goodness gracious, no. But I know that he has threatened and taken many girls in my situation. I don't know what more I can say, but Bella will be able to tell you some.
Who is Bella?
Bella Pullman. She's the landlady of the place where I could take you there if you like.
Please do.
It's me. It's Lucy. This gentleman would like to speak to Bella. It's the doctor who helped me. I must leave to return to my uncle. Thanks again.
On one funny note, did anyone notice the elderly gentleman there? Very much like that bit from The Simpsons where old Grandpa Simpson suddenly turns around. Out of the way, I don't like
the look of you.
That has to be one of the worst accents I've ever heard as well. But, yeah, let's see if we can find out a little bit more about Leather Apron.
Can I get a refill, please?
If you'd be patient, Madam Bella will arrive in a moment.
Good evening. I am Dr. Watson. It is young Lucy who told me to come see you.
Ah, so you're the Good Samaritan who saved her uncle without asking for anything in return. And now you've come to see me, no doubt, to explain that the poor little thing doesn't belong here, and you will see to her future. Well, if you expect me to let her leave with you...
It's not that, ma'am. You should know I am a married man.
And why should that matter?
I believe there has been a misunderstanding. The reason that Lucy sent me here is that you may be able to give me some information about Leather Apron.
Are you a doctor or a constable?
I am most certainly a doctor, but I am acting in this matter in a private capacity, and I would like to find this man.
Well, If you're able to rid us of him, I'll give you a week's worth of free passes. That man is a thorn in our sides. He spies on the girls in the streets and watches them inside the houses, spying through the windows. And as soon as they're finished with a client, he jumps on them without any warning and forces them to give him their money. I've never seen him, but one of my girls was attacked by this man, and she said that he wore a leather apron and carried a knife. And his face, oh, he has a horrible head with rat's eyes and a deformed mouth. She even said that she knew his name, Pizer or Pizer, I think. But I don't know where she can be found. Margie, Nutcracker, the girl I'm talking about, could tell you more, but I had to let her go last week.
Why did you let Margie go?
The poor girl caught a shameful sickness, and the symptoms have attacked her face, if you know what I mean. So I gave her notice, and a little bit to help her along. I don't know where she is now, but she'll certainly be getting treatment at the clinic if she's still in the neighbourhood.
Did you speak to the police?
What would they do? Who cares about the girls in the streets?
Would you have received a visit from another doctor, a stranger by the name of Tumblety?
I'm just like you, Doctor, sworn to secrecy in my profession. But as I've taken a fancy to you, I can tell you that this name is not unknown to me. And if you do me a little favour, it is possible I might remember something about him.
What kind of favour must I do for you?
You see that man over there? He's a rich artist, a painter, a regular client round here. Well, yesterday, he came and left his cane in the umbrella stand in the hall before going into one of the rooms. Well, when he returned to this room, the cane had disappeared. It's a cane with a massive silver knob. It must be worth a fortune. He threatened to call the police unless he got free services in my establishment for a year. I'll be forced to accept, unwillingly, of course, given the services that he's demanding, unless the cane is found.
Did you question the residents regarding the theft?
They didn't see anything, and there's not one of them that would risk stealing from a client here.
Who was in the room when your weasel of a client was in the chambers?
There were a few that came and went, but Mary could tell you better than I can, because she was the one at the counter yesterday.
Thank you, ma'am.
No problem, my angel.
What happened to this rug?
Oh, it's when we got a coal yesterday. I asked the young man to fill the pail. Came back to put it down, but his feet were covered in soot and he made a black print. Madam Bella said it was my fault and I got a shilling's penalty. I also have to clean the print and it's no picnic. He has immense feet, that boy.
I heard that there was a theft yesterday. Did you see anything?
No, and I was here the whole time.
Who delivers the coal?
It's never the same person. I'd never seen that lad before.
Do you always keep an eye on the coat stand?
Oh, yes. Well, when the coal delivery came, a client came out of the chambers and stopped me from seeing the boy who brought the bucket of coal. You don't think he would have taken advantage?
Until next time, miss.
With pleasure, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, my dear man. I was led to believe that you're a doctor.
None of the residents of this establishment are among my patients, sir.
Oh, you're not here as a doctor, but as a man, then. I understand. This is my kind of place, too. It's in these houses in Whitechapel that you find the girls that are the most natural and definitely the most docile.
Your way of speaking about these women is not that of a gentleman, sir. I heard that you were the victim of a robbery here.
Oh, I'm not complaining. The loss of that walking stick will certainly bring me a very pleasant compensation.
What does your cane look like?
The stick is ebony, about 35 inches long. The round knob is made from chiselled silver with a ring around the middle of the same workmanship. Just like the tip, for that matter. If you find it, don't tell a soul. Keep it for yourself. Got it?
Well, goodbye, sir.
Goodbye. Or until next time. And good evening.
The gentleman, or not so much, that we were just introduced to was Walter Sickert. Someone who, again, around the time, there was not too much in the way of noise around Sickert. It was only really until the 1970s that Sickert became involved in the Jack the Ripper case. The main person with a case against Sickert would be Patricia Cornwell from her book Portrait of a Killer, Jack the Ripper Case Closed, where she postulates that Walter Sickert was the one who wrote the letters for which the Jack the Ripper case is famous. However, the DNA evidence that was presented is not conclusive against Sickert, and neither is the fact that these letters were written by Jack the Ripper. In fact, many are deemed hoaxes. Other such concepts, such as the fact he was impotent, it doesn't seem to be that way in this game, or that he was in England at the time, where it seems like he was in France, would tend to rule Sickert out as someone who could be Jack the Ripper. The only thing that stands against Sickert would be the fact that he painted things which would depict Jack the Ripper. However, this doesn't make him the Whitechapel Killer. He, unfortunately for now, has to remain someone who is part of only a royal conspiracy. A popular theory amongst those who want a more romantic viewpoint of the Jack the Ripper
These
case.
paintings are suggestive, at the very least. Good evening, Doctor. My name is Dr. Watson. Pleased to meet you.
Good evening. I am Dr. Gibbons. Likewise.
I have come to see you about one of your patients. Margie goes by the nickname Nutcracker, who gets her prescription from the clinic. She's a lady of the night and is afflicted with a venereal disease.
I know who you're talking about. Indeed, Margie has syphilis and is being treated with mercury.
Do you have her address?
No. And for your information, she left London for good 3 days ago. She felt threatened.
Margie felt threatened. But by whom?
I believe that Margie was particularly scared of a terrifying man who attacked her once.
Did she say the name Pizer or Pyther?
Unfortunately, she didn't give a name, but she described a man with shifty, rat-like eyes and a mouth twisted in a sinister grimace.
Did Margie have any idea where this man who terrified her so much might be found?
No, but she told me that another girl who'd been attacked like her had told her that this man worked in a cobbler's run by an old Israeli. Also, she saw him again last week, the night of the big fire. She told of going to see the fire like most everyone else in the area. While there, she recognised her attacker in the crowds gathered at the warehouses. There was no mistaking a face like that, she said. She kept an eye on the man the whole time the firemen were working in order to avoid him.
Goodbye, Dr. Gibbons.
Until we meet again, my dear colleague.
A large black footprint.
What can I do for you, my dear colleague?
Pardon me, Doctor, but who made the large black footprints there near the beds?
The brother of one of my patients. The poor thing had her leg amputated after colliding with a carriage. We arranged to find her a prosthesis.
Prostheses are very expensive. How did this man pay?
He told me that one of his uncles gave him a walking stick with a chiselled silver knob. I agreed to accept this knob in exchange for a simple prosthesis with harness. But this object is of great value, and I could finance half a dozen other prostheses by selling it on Petticoat Lane.
Doctor, I have reason to believe that the silver knob that you possess is from a cane that was stolen by the man who brought it to you, and I believe I know to whom it belongs.
That's what I was worried about. The story of the uncle seemed a little strange. Nevertheless, you must have proof of what you claim. I will show you all of the knobs that we have here. If you find the knob that the young man gave me, I will believe you.
So be it, but something is bothering me. I will need a complete cane, not just a knob.
Don't worry, dear chap, build one. I can loan you some tools. Make use of the odds and ends in my cupboard.
It'll help get rid of it.
Well, I shall try. I will have to remember the description that Sickert gave. Goodbye, Dr. Gibbons.
Until we meet again, my dear colleague.
So yes, it seems like London doctors of the period were not exactly the most honorary, shall we say, at the time. But then again, there's not exactly a main hospital, it's just a small clinic. Now, it's interesting how they mention that the individual is Walter Sickert, and he's mentioned as such in the notes. However, Walter Sickert does not ever mention his name in this game, so I'm not sure how they figured that one out, personally. Still, this is a fairly simple puzzle. We just need to find the ebony stick, which we have there, and then basically it's 3 pieces of silver. There you go, silver knob. And we've got the tip, and then we just need the silver wrapping around the middle, and here it is. So that is pretty much all of it at that point. So we're going to hope to see if we can exchange, if we can get this back off the doctor. Although, what makes me think that because this is an adventure game, it's not going to be quite as easy as simply building this cane.
There, all done. Holmes couldn't have done better himself.
What can I do for you, my dear colleague?
I believe I found the knob from the stolen cane, which I succeeded in putting back together.
That's the one. And yet I cannot give it to you, Doctor. I will only return it to the police, and only if there is an official complaint against me.
Would there be a way to convince you to give me the cane?
Find me a dozen solid adjustable harnesses for wooden leg prostheses, and it's yours, Doctor.
Goodbye, Dr. Gibbons.
Until we meet again, my dear colleague.
This interview with the doctor revealed an important fact. Leather Apron could not be the Bucks Row murderer. According to Margie, the villain passed most of the night of the crime at the fire. He could not have been at the scene of the murder at the moment it was committed. He is, nonetheless, a dangerous character.
Watson is right there about Leather Apron not being able to be Jack the Ripper because of being seen at the Great Fire, and that was in fact the thing that ruled out Leather Apron from the investigation.
A cobbler's shop. There's nobody here. How very odd.
Now let's see if Isaac Solomonovich can help us with Leather Apron, and maybe give us some harnesses.
I say, these things look like harnesses. Oh my, they are noisy. Good evening, sir. Pardon the interruption. The door was open. I didn't think that I would find anyone working at this hour.
Good evening, sir. I didn't hear you come in.
Say, those things that made noise, they are really harnesses, aren't they?
Yes, horse harnesses. But I must tell you, sir, that the store is normally closed at this hour. That is why I've asked you to return tomorrow.
I didn't come about my shoes. I came to speak of a cobbler, perhaps one of your former employees? A man with very particular habits.
You aren't with the police by any chance? I'm sorry, but I do not want to speak of anything but shoes with you.
I am not a policeman. I am Dr. Watson. It's Mr. Finlay, who told me that you might be in a position to inform me.
Ah, that Mr. Finlay is a very brave man. And if he sent you, then you must certainly be a worthy man also. So, Doctor, who is this cobbler with strange habits?
The man of whom I speak is called Pizer or Pyther, a man with a frightening face. Do you know him?
Yes, John Pizer. He worked here for a while, but he is no longer here.
Do you know where I can find him?
No, and if you look, you will not find him.
Why?
Because he is in hiding, Doctor. You see, a week ago, a horrible murder took place in the neighborhood. A rumor circulated that he might have been responsible for this crime. They say he has quarreled with women of certain virtue in the past, if you understand me.
Isaac, it is about the Bucks Row case that I have come to see you. I have the certitude and an incontestable witness that Pizer is innocent, at least of this crime, although he has attacked a number of street women. If he doesn't come forward to explain himself to the authorities, he is condemned to hiding and to take the fall for this murder. Furthermore, it will cast suspicions on your community because they must be hiding him. And while the whole police force is hunting for him, they cannot concentrate on the real assassin who roams the streets and, one never knows, may take any one of you any day.
If what you say is true, your visit is a godsend to our community, Doctor. I tell you something. I know Sergeant Thick, an honest policeman who lives in the area. I'll tell John's family that he must go there to explain himself. But if you could please go as soon as possible to the police to give them this report that you say is incontestable.
I will go as soon as I take leave of you.
Thank you. If I can ever be of service in any way, do not hesitate to ask.
Could we transform your horse harnesses into harnesses for wooden legs? Adjustable harnesses?
A good craftsman can do anything, Doctor. And I do believe that's what I am. Come back in a while and it will be done. That will be my thanks for what you have done.
I shall return later.
At your convenience, sir.
So for now, we are going to bring an end to this second episode of Sherlock Holmes vs. Jack the Ripper with a look at John Pizer, or Leather Apron. Much of what you have just heard between Dr. Watson and Isaac Solomonovich is actually true. John Pizer was born in 1850 and was known as Leather Apron, and was known for harassing the prostitutes in Whitechapel and carrying a knife. In fact, Sergeant William Thick, who is also mentioned by Isaac Solomonovich in the game, had known Pizer for 18 years, and he was the one who went to fetch Pizer upon knowing about the Star's article, for fear that Pizer would have been ripped apart by baying mobs. Pizer was taken to the Leman Street police station, he was questioned, and he was cleared of being Jack the Ripper, very much due to the fact that there was the fire at the London docks, and also it was found that he had actually paid for a room that night, so he had an ironclad alibi. Pizer would later receive compensation from the newspapers, although not in vast amounts, and he would eventually die in 1897 of gastroenteritis. One thing that's come up a lot that we have seen in this video is the fact that Whitechapel is made up of many very tight-knit communities, and there is also a great deal of anger in the area. You can see from Isaac Solomonovich that he wants to keep and protect the Jewish community, and he's not the only one who is trying to protect his community. This will not work in the favour of the police during this, and next time in part 3 the Buckshot assassin will strike again, and we will find out more about the second victim, Dark Annie Chapman. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.